It has been a master class in avoiding any questions, and nothing's been made clear. She's been impossible to pin down on anything because she hasn't given any access. The American people deserve it. Wouldn't you agree?
Do you know the big problem with having people speak on your behalf like Kamala Harris? Well, you put these people in a position where they embarrass themselves because they're trying to defend something that is indefensible. And that's exactly what Gina Raimondo, who is the Secretary of Commerce for the Biden administration, as she goes onto the news and tries to run cover for Kamala Harris, and it just does not go well for her. Let's watch.
You know, you talked about predictability, and I think one of the questions that we've had at this table for the last several weeks, actually, since the vice president has been the nominee, is what the predictability is going to be as it relates to the details of her programs, which I think are still amorphous, if you will, in terms of what they really are. I think we don't really know. We had a debate last week a little bit with Mark Cuban, who's been having some back-channel conversations with the Harris campaign. He's hearing certain things. We haven't heard all of them publicly. How much detail on all of these plans do you believe, and whether it's from the former president or whether it's from Harris, do you think that the American people deserve before they go to the polls, recognizing, by the way, that it's not just going to the polls physically in November. In some states, you're able to mail in now effectively. And so you would want the voters to know as much as humanly possible, I'd imagine.
Yes, here's what I think is most important. Like, at the end of the day, I think Kamala Harris is being incredibly honest. She knows she has to work with Congress. You know, Trump can throw out whatever he says about this tax policy, that tax policy. You actually have to get in there and work with Congress. You know, the minutia. I don't think the American public are really interested in the minutia of, you know, the mechanism of how she'll increase taxes on billionaires. Like, here's the important point, which is what.
But I would assume there's not that many billionaires in the world. I recognize that, and there's a lot of people who'd say get out your smallest violin for the billionaires. But I would assume if you happen to be a billionaire and you happen to be an American citizen, you'd want to know how you were going to be impacted.
Here's what you know. Here's what's crystal clear. Trump wants to cut taxes on billionaires and cut taxes on corporations who don't need it. It will balloon the deficit, and ultimately, it's the average American worker who will pay. Kamala Harris has been crystal clear. Billionaires need to pay more. It is wrong that a school teacher, truck driver, construction worker pays more in taxes, a higher rate than a billionaire, and she says she will fix it. Exactly the mechanism. The American public doesn't have time to study the tax code. They want to know there's somebody in the Oval Office fighting for them.
All right, so let's just respond to this really quickly here. Gina and the rest of this crew that is supporting Kamala Harris, you know what they all have in common? They're very arrogant in their answers, right? They keep assuming that American people don't want to know the details. That's the problem with the swing states. Why are there a small selection of undecided voters who are on the fence? Because they don't have all the information. They know what Trump stands for, which is why she was able to clearly articulate Trump's plan, but she's not clearly able to articulate Kamala Harris's plan. And that's a problem for Kamala Harris in those swing states. So that is the first thing. The second thing is it took 50 days for Kamala Harris to finally put on her website some level of policy positions. That just came out this morning. They're not very detailed. In fact, they're more generalized, and then it attacks Trump by accusing him of using Project 2025. So it's more of a political tactic to minimize him and not necessarily a political move to help voters see clarity in what she stands for. So again, she fails in that department. And then that whole tax plan lie that if Trump continues to give tax cuts to billionaires, that it will increase the deficit. That's not true. The thing about reducing taxes for corporations, it allows them to hire more people. It allows them to pay higher wages. When you tax them more, that is an extra expense, and now they have to prioritize differently. Now, I know this is getting annoying. This has been the number one story around her campaign, that she doesn't speak to the press. So let's hear what Gina had to say about that.
Yeah, I know you're a surrogate, But the American people are frustrated. The media is frustrated at the amount of access anyone's gotten to her for the past 41 days. I know you've seen that. We're finally going to have a debate tomorrow night, but she sat down for one interview that was taped and then cut down, and certain little things came out from it. But it has been a master class in avoiding any questions, and nothing's been made clear by her. Maybe it's been made clear in dribs and drabs from her policymakers when it comes out in print or on off a teleprompter at one of her scripted speeches. She's been impossible to pin down on anything because she hasn't given any access. The American people deserve it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and I hear you, but I respectfully disagree. This is a presidential election like no other. She only has a few weeks to do everything, and she's spending her time talking to Americans. She has a punishing schedule, out and about, everywhere, being with the people who she wants to elect her. But I guess, look, tomorrow night it will be on display. It'll be a robust debate. I guess from where I see it, and were I still in my old role as a governor, or prior to that I ran a business, I see in her somebody who has a vision, who's been really clear about her desire to help businesses and small businesses. You know, she talks about being, pro-business, pro-worker.
I mean, she's struggling to defend Kamala Harris here. Now, obviously, if you have common sense, you know why she's doing this. She's not necessarily doing this because she truly, in her heart, believes that Kamala Harris is the best candidate and her policies are the best. She's doing this because, number one, President Biden appointed her as the Secretary of Commerce, and she'd like to stay in the government, right? She'd like to continue in her position, maybe get a higher position. It happens on both sides, right? That's why you have the term surrogates. So, there's zero credibility in what she's saying. She already embarrassed herself during the DNC when she didn't even know about the jobs report and why there was a discrepancy. So, we can't really value anything that she says. So here's my point. Her campaign muzzling her and not allowing her to provide any type of details, I believe only hurts her, especially in a state like Pennsylvania, which is why you've been seeing a shift in Pennsylvania over the last few weeks. And the top CNN pollster covered that. Watch.
I want to take a look at Pennsylvania, and what we see is a tightening race in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. All right, this is Harris versus Trump margin in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. A month ago, when you looked at the polls, New York Times +4 Harris, +3 Quinnipiac for Harris, Franklin and Marshall +3 for Harris. But look at polls that have come out over the last week or so, and what do we see? We see a much tighter race. We see a tie in the CBS YouGov poll. We see a tie in the CNN SSRS poll. And this, to me, is part of an emerging pattern, which is in a very pivotal state. What we saw was a small Harris lead, but within the margin of error, becoming a race that is way, way, way too close to call at this particular point, one that is even.
You say very pivotal the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania could be.
Well, this was the great question when Kamala Harris was making her VP selection. Who should she select? And, of course, folks like myself thought that she should take Josh Shapiro, who, of course, is the governor of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Why? Because his approval rating is 59%. And the bottom line is, if Kamala Harris loses in the state of Pennsylvania, and that is the tipping point state, as Mr. Berman put it, the state that put Donald Trump over the top in the Electoral College, there are going to be some real questions as to whether Kamala Harris should have chosen Josh Shapiro, given how popular he is in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Could she have been a winner if she had chosen him instead of Tim Walz? We don't know the answer to that question. We don't know who's going to win the state of Pennsylvania, but it's certainly a question that at this particular moment, with the Pennsylvania polls getting tighter and tighter and tighter, that I'm certainly asking, John.
Yeah, the more I do these videos, the more it just becomes so obvious to me. And again, I'm not a campaign strategist. I'm not an expert in that field. But from the outside looking in, for the life of me, I don't understand why she wouldn't even create some type of policy that is geared towards Pennsylvania. Right, and have a speech and a town hall for Pennsylvania. I don't understand why she hasn't done that. Now, correction, I do understand why she hasn't done that. I just don't understand the risk that they're taking, right? Obviously, she hasn't done it because she doesn't have anything for Pennsylvania. She's not going to do anything for Pennsylvania like over the last 3.5 years. So, trying to fake it, I don't think really works well for her. people see that a mile away. But bringing these types of points up to people who obviously have Trump derangement syndrome is never going to work, because when you look at this election and how people see the election, if Trump was to win, you see why our country is so divisive. Watch this.
53% say Trump represents major change, just 25% for Harris. Maybe seems counterintuitive since Trump was already president. He hasn't stopped talking about 2020. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that change number should be higher because Trump would represent the greatest change in the history of the American Republic. He would take our democracy and turn it into an authoritarian strongman, likely dictatorship on day one, his own words, not mine. So those numbers don't surprise me. But look, I think with Kamala Harris, tomorrow's debate, you got to understand, this is the last major event before Election Day. Now, people think Election Day in November, not true. Election Day starts next week when ballots in Pennsylvania will begin being cast. We've had tremendous economic success over these last 4 years under Harris and Biden. And if she could continue to make that case and let Trump be Trump, he will not be able to resist with the insults.
Yeah, but there's one problem. She will have to do that without having her notes with her or her, as you guys see on the screen here, her service animal in Tim Walz, right? Or without a teleprompter. So I don't see how she's going to be able to accomplish those things. In fact, I'd be more shocked if she did that versus shocked if Trump was very disciplined. That's how crazy it is. Now, first of all, economic success over the past 4 years. What are you, delusional? What economic success? This is the arrogance I'm talking about that the Democrats operate with. Economic success. Go into Pennsylvania talking that way and you tell me what's going to happen. And that's what I'm saying. She's in trouble in that state because the language is not landing for those people. The true dictators or the people who are truly exercising authoritarian characteristics are the Democrats. Look at what they've done over the past 4 years. Mandating vaccines to the point where people got fired. Censoring people on social media platforms, even though it's free speech, but they call it hate speech. Suppressing their political opponents by colluding with these social media platforms and news organizations. Trying to change legislation around Title IX by allowing men to play in women's sports, manipulating parents into believing that their children should get gender-affirming care or it's going to be all bad for them, allowing the illegal migrants to jump to the front of the line over veterans, over people in the middle class, over citizens who have been paying their taxes, allowing abortions with zero restrictions. Now, if that doesn't wake people up, I don't know what will. But at the end of the day, this is what's going to happen if Kamala Harris gets elected. So this is why you still see people on the Republican side, senators going onto the news and setting the record straight, just like Ted Cruz did. Watch.
What Kamala Harris is trying to do here is really bizarre, which is she's trying to run as the change candidate. She's trying to treat Donald J. Trump like he is the incumbent president. And that's utterly disconnected from reality. She is the current administration. And normally the way VPs run is they say, hey, we did a great job. The president did a great job. Let's continue the successes of the administration I was the VP in. Well, the problem is Biden and Harris, their policy record is a complete train wreck. And so you look at her convention speech, you look at that interview, the entire time she's saying, well, I would do this to secure the border. It's like, well, if you would do that, why don't you do that? You're in charge right now today. And so everything she's saying she would do, the way I would put it is actions speak louder than words. We know what she'll do on the border because she's been border czar for 4 years, and we've had 11.5 million people invade this country because she refuses to enforce the law. We know what she'll do on energy because she and Joe Biden have been in charge for 4 years, and they've waged a war on energy that has driven the cost of gasoline and everything else through the roof. And so I hope tomorrow night in the debate that Trump really prosecutes her record versus his record, because on almost every measure, the lives of the American people were much better when Trump was president. We had a Republican Senate and a Republican House than they are now under the Biden-Harris record.
That is perfectly said. And that's why we're all looking forward to the debate. I will be live streaming the debate, reacting to it. So make sure that you turn on your notifications for that. Now, what's interesting is not only did Ted Cruz say that, which you would expect people on the Republican side to say that. Unfortunately for Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders came out and said the same thing.
Described Vice President Kamala Harris as a progressive. She has previously supported Medicare for all. Now she does not. She's previously supported a ban on fracking. Now she does not. These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election. My own view is slightly different.
So her weaknesses far outweigh former President Trump's. And so we look forward to that debate. That's my mindset. What's yours? What do you guys think about her surrogate going on the news and humiliating herself again because she's trying to defend what is indefensible? Honestly, the polls are not doing good. We went over that already. And that even Bernie Sanders acknowledges that Kamala Harris isn't going to change. I want to hear what your answers are and more in the comment section below. Thank you for checking out the video today. Stay grateful, stay focused, and stay true. Peace.